What's up everyone? So today is going to be my June wrap up, and no, I did not do one for May. When I was finishing my Reading to Zero challenge, I started having a lot of duds, and I just don't really want to talk about those because I'm in a much better reading place now since I totally finished all the books that I owned, and I am now finally getting to read books that I'm super excited about. I will go through my stats though really quick via a story graph. I just finished the day filling out all of my reviews, which takes a while for me, but I like to do it before my videos because then the good old story graph puts these graphs together for me. Okay, so we're gonna start out with, I read 11 books in June. That was 3,957 pages. And it looks like they were mysterious, emotional, reflective, dark, and tense. That definitely sounds like me. I read 82%, wow, were between 300 and 500 pages. That is very cool. That's probably also from all the Jodi books. 27% of them were nonfiction and 73% were fiction. And then my top genres were thriller, horror, and crime. Contemporary was also up there. And then of course, memoir, mystery, literary, biography, true crime, religion, and psychology. So it looks like I had 3 1-stars, 1 2-star, 2 3-stars, 2 4-stars, and 3 5-stars. And let me just tell you that those 4 and 5 stars didn't come in until I started reading books I wanted to read again. My average rating is 3.09 for the month, not for the year, but still I always have a really low rating. Okay, I'm gonna try and go in order of star rating because that's what I like to do, but I don't have all of the books with me with print. But first off, we're gonna start with the one that was the first book that actually ever triggered me. It was Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez, and I actually did put the trigger warning and the spoiler on Goodreads and on the story graph, but it's behind like the spoiler thing that you can put on there, so that way it's not visible unless you click it. But if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you can go over to my reviews and you can actually see what I'm talking about. The book in itself was extremely disturbing, and I just didn't even, I guess, do enough research in order to know what I was getting myself into, but there was a very specific scene that happened. I just couldn't. I had to stop the book, I had to put it down. I almost wanted to throw up, but then I was just extremely upset for the rest of the day because of that vision being in my head. It's something that I never thought about before. I never wanted to visualize it, and so that is why I just can't with that book. Moving along to my other 1 stars, I rated The Island by Adrienne McKinty 1 star. And I did this because this book was absolutely ridiculous. This is about a family. It's like a stepmom who married a widower with their 2 kids. They go to Australia. They are very rich, entitled, spoiled brats. And they want to go on this private island, which is not technically open for the public. And they were like, oh, well here, we're gonna just pay you a whole bunch of money. So they get to go on this island. They end up doing something that's pretty bad. I mean, it was an accident, kind of-ish, I guess, but they get in trouble with this family that owns the island. This family is this, I don't even know what to call them because it's like kind of a cult, but not really a cult. But they start chasing them and kidnapping them, and the whole rest of the book is just that over and over and over again. So this is technically, I guess, what you would call a popcorn thriller. I don't like them. I don't like books that happen in a small time frame, like 24 hours. This happens within 3 days or less, because I feel like there's just so much description that has to go in it, and they always have this very long description of like a fight scene or a car chase or things like that, and I cannot stand those. I also can't stand the constant, like, they were running away and they were like, oh my gosh, look at this, there's a water bottle, so convenient. Then they're running, we're gonna die, oh look at this, there's a machete, how convenient. Like, no, that's not what actually would happen if you were surviving on this private island on Australia, and I just thought it was stupid. There's only 1 twist in the book. I saw it coming from a mile away. It was at the very end, so I just didn't love it. My next 1-star read is sadly a Jodi Picoult book. It's Wish You Were Here. I did not like this book because of the fact that it's not written like her other books. I love Jodi Picoult because of the fact that she writes very realistic, dark, moral dilemma, topics. And that's what I really like. I like that she makes me think. I like that she makes me feel emotion. This didn't do anything for me. The only thing real in this book was the COVID aspect, but the whole rest of the story I just didn't love. This is about Diana, and she is taking a trip to the Galapagos Islands, supposedly with her boyfriend, but then COVID breaks out, so she goes ahead and goes without him because he has to work in the hospital. She ends up being there for longer than 2 weeks because of quarantine. Everything shut down, and she develops relationships with a young girl and her father. Part 2 of this book is where it gets just crazy. I was already really bored with part 1, and then part 2 has this huge twist that is kind of like magical realism, and I just don't really want that in my book that I'm thinking, oh, this is gonna be a realistic Jodi Picoult book. There's no courtroom scenes. I didn't feel like her characters were as well developed as some of her other books. Diana was just a brat, and they had a lot of communication issues like within their relationship, so I just didn't love anything about it, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. All right, then I read Mean Baby by Selma Blair, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. It's a good memoir, but I think because I actually didn't really know who Selma Blair was, I was reading it because I wanted to know more about MS, but I actually didn't learn anything about it, and so it was kind of just me reading or listening to someone's life that I didn't really know anything about, but not really knowing about the topic that I thought I was going to learn about. It was just, you know, middle of the ground for me. I don't really have much else to say about it, except that if you know who Selma Blair is, you would probably honestly love it because she obviously goes into detail of her life. All right, my next 3-star read was Hidden Pictures by Jason Rukalok, I guess is how you say it. Now, this book, I actually had a really good time reading the majority of it. It was pretty fast-paced. I loved the storyline, and it has these amazing pictures in it because it's about a nanny who is watching this little boy, and he starts drawing like really scary pictures, which I mean, how cool and creative is that to have that in a book? So, you know, points for that. But the problem that I had with this book is that once I got to the end, the last 80%, it was just a huge train wreck. It was like the author just wanted to throw any type of surprise and twist at you without it actually making sense. And so I had to drop my rating from 4 stars down to 3 stars because of that. I just felt it was very messy, and it didn't need all of that stuff in it. It was just weird. So that is why I'm giving it 3 stars, but I think that if you could suspend your belief and you like paranormal, then you would really love this because it was a really good ride while I was reading it. Okay, now for a 4-star read is Local Woman Missing. This is actually the first book that I picked up after I was done with my reading to zero. I listened to it and I read the physical book, and I really loved it. This would be a really good book for thriller beginners. It doesn't have too many dark aspects, but it was also very thrilling. I loved the kidnapping aspect, and it keeps you on your toes and keeps you entertained while you're reading or listening. I will say that with the audiobook, you might get a little confused because it does have multiple characters in it, so I did have to pick up the physical book in order to make sure I knew who was who, but I really enjoyed this story. I just couldn't rate it 5 stars because the ending didn't end the way that I wanted or thought it should. I know that makes me sound like very selfish, but I just didn't think it worked as well as a different ending that I was expecting in my head. That's just my own reader preference, but it is a really great read. All right, another 4-star that I read was Escape by Carolyn Jessup. This is a memoir about a polygamist cult. So Carolyn actually grew up in a polygamist cult her whole life. She ended up getting married at a really young age to a really old man and having 8 kids. And this is her story about all of that, plus how she escaped. And I thought it was very interesting. I love polygamy and cults in general. I have read a lot of books though about the topic, so that's why I only rated 4 stars, because it wasn't as shocking since I already knew a lot of this stuff happened. But I think that if this was your first polygamy cult book to pick up, you would definitely probably rate it 5 stars. My favorite one is still The Sound of Gravel, and that's why I just like gravitate towards that one, but this one was still absolutely amazing. All right, now we're gonna get into my 5 stars for the month. So first 5-star that I read was 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult. I absolutely loved this book. I picked this one up because I really wanted to relate to how other people felt about, you know, going going to school and having to be scared for your life. I was homeschooled my whole life, so I've never thought about that. And so this really brought out like the relevance of what it would be like to go to school and have to worry about one day having a shooter come in. But what I also really liked about this is Jodi really shows you both sides of the story to everything, and so I felt bad for the shooter in general because of the bullying that was being done. Not saying that what he did was correct, but it was just really nice to see both sides and feel both emotions. I loved the courtroom scenes for this one. I loved all the characters for this one. The twist was amazing. I just absolutely loved it, and I learned a lot from it, so I highly suggest picking this one up. Another 5-star for this month was The Family Next Door. This one I actually just finished here. I technically read half of it at the end of June and the other half at the beginning of July, but I absolutely loved it. This is a true crime book, and now I definitely want to get into more true crime. This is about the 13 Turpin siblings. They were abused for their whole life by their parents. Their parents would chain them up, cage them up in their house. They wouldn't let them take a bath for a whole entire year. They wouldn't let them eat. They beat them. It's absolutely crazy. And this only happened, they were only rescued in 2018. So it was very recent. I loved this book. It shocked me. It disturbed me. It was very interesting to read and to listen to. And now I want to actually look up and see more news about it or documentaries about it, because I knew nothing when I went into this book, and it was a really good read. All right, my last 5-star of this month was A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult. I loved this book because it is about a shooting that happens at an abortion clinic. And so you're following, again, the characters, and you're following people on both sides. There are characters pro-choice, pro-life. You get to see all sorts of thoughts and opinions within this book, and I really liked it because I didn't feel like Jodi had an agenda. It was just like, here is what happens in my story. There are obviously always people on both sides. These are their stories, and I really, really enjoyed it because you're following characters and why they were in the abortion clinic, like what made them go to the abortion clinic, what in their life caused them to have to be there at that day when the shooting happened. And I just absolutely loved it. Those were all the books that I read, or mostly read. I didn't tell you about some of the ones that I read in the very, very beginning of June that were just absolutely awful, because I had 3 months of reading 1- and 2-star books, and I was really worried for my sanity. I thought maybe I just wasn't a reader anymore. Maybe I just fell out of love with reading. But thankfully we turned it all around, and I am now reading from my shelf all the new books that I got for my birthday, plus from the library. You should check out my new TBR game if you haven't seen it. I'll link it up here, but it's super fun, and I'm so excited for my reading for the future now, and hopefully next month's wrap up is also filled with some 4- and 5-star reads. That's it for this video, and I will see you guys very soon in another video. Bye everyone.